you ready to do this?
Every former athlete wishes they could go back.
Love the game. It gave me so much. You have a small window of this thing. Enjoy it.
This is A New Path, a sports podcast, hosted by Peyton Schmitz.
Welcome into the New Path podcast here, and today is our very first episode, and we are joined by a close friend of mine, but also a former player of my dad's, Jay Schroeder. Jay, welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for joining. We're just going to dive right into it, and why don't you kind of tell us, what sports did you play? What was your favorite sport? We'll just get going.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the time. Thanks for the invite. Happy to join you. I think growing up for me, just going right into it, I played pretty much everything. My parents were big proponents of not specializing in any particular sport. So they had me play soccer, baseball, basketball, pretty much anything that I showed an interest in. They encouraged me to go give it a try and play. And so, yeah, growing up, played a lot of everything, and really just enjoyed all the sports. But yeah, primarily from there, football was the big one kind of going forward, as I got older. Yeah.
I mean, you, for those of you listening, Jay he played high school football at St. Charles Prep in Columbus, Ohio, and then went on to play football at Western Michigan. Can you kind of talk about what that was like going from Central Ohio football up to that state up north?
Yeah, right. Committing the mortal sin, crossing the state line north for any kid from Columbus, Ohio, whether it's the actual University of Michigan or just any school affiliated with the state of Michigan. But yeah, no, it was an awesome time. Great experience, and I think my time at Western really shaped a lot of my relationships, my values, shaped me as a person. And then, as an athlete too, college football is a whole different ball game from high school football, as professional football is an entirely different game from college. So you learn a lot of different lessons and meet a lot of different people from all over the country, which was probably one of the coolest things. And just being a part of a locker room like that, where you have people with different experiences, different backgrounds, different points of views, and really just becomes a melting pot of people. And the locker room just kind of turns into a really special place, I think, at that next level.
Yeah, I mean, I played high school sports. I was a baseball player, and I definitely can speak to what you're talking about. It's a very unique environment, but even so, I can imagine with college football, it's even more so of that. It's just this completely different environment, and especially going from Central Ohio up to Western Michigan, it's really cool you were able to do that. I believe. Was Western Michigan your first choice, or was there somewhere else you ever thought about going?
Oh man, yeah. I always dreamed of being a Buckeye. Growing up in Central Ohio and in the Columbus area. I think and unless your parents or somebody else in your family is a Michigan fan, it's I think it's pretty much any kid's dream to put on the scarlet and gray. So that was obviously a hope, back at those times. But I wouldn't trade my time at Western Michigan for the world. I think the people I met there, the friends that I have, the relationships I made there, you meet a ton of great people. And like I said, it's one of the really cool things is I can go to almost any area of the country and can call somebody who was a former teammate or somebody that I know from the Western Michigan network and football specifically that, somebody's going to be down there, and just makes life interesting, right? You can see different people catch up and reminisce on some of those times that you shared.
Yeah. Reminiscing on times. It's always a fun thing to do. You know, when connecting with former teammates, even guys like you, man. You know, it's really fun to get the opportunity to do that. Can you talk a little bit about what your experience was like going to St. Charles in Columbus, Ohio?
Yeah, St. Charles. I mean, for those who aren't familiar with it, is an all boys Catholic preparatory school. I think that in itself provides a unique experience in doing a high school that way. You know, and uh, St. Charles is really more of an academically oriented school, and so there wasn't a ton of stress put on the athletics. But you know, at that time, in through college, you know, you're a student athlete, and the student part comes first, right? And so, if you can't get the grades in the classroom, you're not able to get out on the field. So, I think the way St. Charles stresses their academics really showed me, you know, what's important. They teach you all these different off the field habits that then drive through to different on the field practices, whether that's, you know, the way you study game tape and film and how you prepare for a game versus, you know, going into the classroom and preparing for a test, right? I think there's a lot of similarities. And if you just carry those approaches into both aspects of life, you know, now for me today, it's professionally, right? But a lot of those same lessons still apply. And so yeah, St. Charles in itself is a very unique place, and I think to that point too, a lot of the friendships and people I still stay in touch with today, you know, are from that St. Charles network and brotherhood, as we like to call it. And you know, yeah, I think that's a really important place to me, and will always have a special place in my heart.
Yeah, it definitely. I can attest to that as well. It holds a special place in my heart as well. So, being a punter, you know, that I played baseball. I was a catcher. That's kind of the unsung hero position a little bit. Can you talk about
Mm-hmm.
what it was like to be a punter? What exactly was that like? What was the recruiting process like to be a punter? Because everybody talks about quarterback, wide receiver. We don't ever talk about the punter.
Yeah. I mean, being a punter and kicker and long snapper specialist, you know, it's really no different from a recruiting process. You put together your highlight tapes, you go to different camps, and you know, show coaches and people your abilities, and you know, and do the best you can. Yeah, and then once you get there, you know, it changes. I think a lot of folks in high school, you probably aren't just a punter or kicker, and you're playing other positions, and so you're constantly on the field and you're engaged and involved in the game. And you know, when you're in college, you're getting only maybe 4 or 5 plays a game where you're on the field, unless you're involved as the field goal kicker, you're holding on field goals and extra points. And so I think it really puts an emphasis on how you approach the play and how you approach a game in general. You want to take advantage of your time on the field, right? Because you're getting so few opportunities, and you know, when mistakes happen, those mistakes are really magnified and emphasized because, you know, you're expected to have maybe, you know, 1 or 2 jobs, and you're expected to be the best at that. And so when things do go wrong, like I said, it feels like, you know, you really missed out on an opportunity. So you got to learn to have that short memory and how to bounce back, because if you did mess up on the one before, you know, you're only going to get maybe 1 or 2 more. So you got to take advantage of those to really have an impact on the game and, you know, help your team. So I would say it's, you know, it speaks to a lot about that preparation and just staying engaged and knowing what's going on, what the situation is, and being able to mentally kind of flip that switch at the spur of a moment and lock in as you step in between those lines.
Yeah, yeah. Being a punter, that is, it's definitely one of the positions that if you mess up, everybody's going to tell you messed up. But if you don't, then they're just like, oh, hey, good job.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's kind of like just simply meeting expectations, right? You're expected to do your job and expected to play your part. And like I said, when it's, only 4 or 5 plays a game, when you mess up on one, that's 20 to 25% of your plays right there. And, that if you're looking at stats and stuff like that,
Right.
it can really mess up averages and, just really mess up your team. Right. And you can put your team in a bad spot. So yeah, I think it's really, I always just draw on, a story that, kind of sounds probably insensitive to a little bit of maybe your listening group, but when I was in 3rd grade, was really my first time playing organized basketball, and my dad was my coach at the time, and I overheard somebody out in the lobby of the gym saying, their parents would give them $1 or a quarter for every point that they scored in the game. And I kind of looked at my dad afterwards and said, hey, can we work out some kind of a deal like that, where I get $1 for every point I score? And he turned around in the car and he looked at me and he said, no, you don't get rewarded for doing what you're expected to do.
Right. Exactly.
And so while it may come across a little bit harsh, I think there's a lesson in that, right? And you're expected to be at a certain level, and when you don't perform to that level, then we're going to talk about it. But when you do what you're supposed to do, we don't have to make a big scene or a big deal about it.
Yeah.
A slap on the butt and a good job is, I think, all any athlete really needs.
Yeah, yeah. So we've talked about your history with sports, what sports you played, how far you went, your time at Western Michigan. Let's kind of move towards the end of your career, which probably would have been during your time at Western Michigan. How did realizing that your time with sports was coming to an end, how did that impact you?
Yeah, I think in the moment, it's tough to think about, right? Because you're still playing. We were fortunate enough, my last 2 seasons at Western Michigan, to go to bowl games where we played in the Bahamas Bowl, the Idaho Potato Bowl. And so we got a little bit of extra football. And so especially that senior season, having those extra couple weeks of practice, having those extra couple weeks around the team, I think those were really special. And it was really kind of staying in the moment. And so you're not really thinking about, hey, when all this is over, this is done. And so it didn't really hit me, right at the end of the season. And then I had some professional aspirations. And so then it turned into going and working out and trying to prepare for pro day and doing those sorts of things. And so you're still with a group of guys and you're working out and you still have kind of that camaraderie and that sort of feeling. And so it doesn't really hit you right away. And then, once pro day happens, the draft happens, you get through into the summertime and you kind of realize, okay, well, nobody's calling. What am I going to do next? I think that's when it starts to hit you, right? And at that point, you're either maybe trying to find a job. You may still be living in your college town. You may be back at home living with your parents. And it can be kind of a different feeling, right? You've lost that locker room camaraderie group. And, some of those people that you used to have around all the time are no longer right there. And it's tough. It's tough. I think, and you start to kind of evaluate internally, what is my identity without sports or without football specifically? What do I like to do? What are my hobbies? What am I gonna put all this time that I used to spend, on football or on sports, and what am I going to do next?
Right.
And I think for a lot of people, that's a really difficult question to answer. I know for me, I would say for about a year, now that I've grown, matured, and, kind of found some different things, I would say for about a year after I got done playing and all that stuff, I would say I went through a period of depression, and trying to just kind of find myself and who I was, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be, and what my hobbies were going to be, because I think it's very important to find a hobby, regardless of what it is. And I think as you can kind of start to answer some of those questions, you start to feel better and kind of come to grips with those kind of days are behind you.
Yeah. I mean, man, it's sports is so integral for so many people, whether it's watching sports or being an athlete, but you don't really realize as an athlete that it's all the time. It's all the things people don't see that goes into it. And exactly like you're saying, you lose that camaraderie, you lose the locker room or the bench or wherever it may be. And it's just, it's kind of hard to find something immediately to replace that. What have you found that's been able to kind of maybe fill the void, not entirely, but at least a little bit?
Yeah. No, I think for me, like I said, I kind of went through that period of time where I felt stuck. I had a job, I was working, but I was living back in Columbus, was in my parents' house, just kind of trying to save some money, figuring out, what's going to be next. Where do I want to live? Is Columbus going to be the place for me? And I think what really got me out of that funk was I was fortunate enough to be given an opportunity to relocate through work and move out west. I spent the next year in San Francisco, and living in San Francisco Bay Area, California. And really just got to immerse myself in a different culture, find some different people with some different thoughts and different different mentality who weren't necessarily as sports driven.
Right.
And that introduced me to a lot of things, getting outdoors and, like I said, spent all that time outdoors, whether it was practicing, playing, just hanging out with guys, doing stuff. And, out west here, we've got all kinds of mountains and different outdoors types of activities, and there's beaches, and you can really get to anything you want to do in a single day. And that opened my eyes to a lot of things, and started trying things like snowboarding in the wintertime. I spend a lot of time, I have a dog, we go hiking up in the mountains. We're not campers. We don't stay out overnight or do anything, but we'll go day hikes and stuff like that. Right. And so it's just finding new ways to occupy that time. And, I've gotten really into cooking. I found out that, kind of my senior year of college, and during that senior season, I had graduated already. I decided I was going to take a cooking class just because I needed my 12 hours to stay eligible. And, that kind of opened my eyes to like, oh, hey, this is fun. If I try this or if I do this. And so I've gotten into cooking and grilling and trying all sorts of stuff like that. I'm a big golfer. I enjoy playing golf. So that's a big weekend activity for me. Especially in the summertime.
Yeah. Don't want to do that when it's cold out.
No, definitely a fair weather golfer. But yeah, I think that helps me kind of scratch that competitive itch, so to speak. Right. And, it's you versus a golf course, or if you're playing with a group of buddies and, maybe you got $20 on the line to make things interesting, but just a way to be competitive, right? And have some fun and kind of drive that, because that's the one thing that I think truly never goes away from any athlete, no matter how far away you get from the game. I
Yeah.
think to get to a certain level, whether it's, varsity level at high school or, college level or you make it to the pros, I think you have to have that ultra competitive personality, and you have to have that mentality that nobody is better than you. Or if they are, they have to prove it and show you.
Right.
And I think, golf is kind of one of those easier on the body. We're not playing at the pro level. We don't have these 120 mile an hour swing speeds and things like that. So it's easier on the body, and it's fun. It gets you outdoors. And like I said, it really helps kind of scratch that competitive itch, at least for me. And at the end of the day, it's you against the golf course, regardless of what's going on around you. And so it's, you're always just trying to go out and beat yourself. So golf is a lot of fun, and that's one of the big hobbies for me. And I think it's, like I said, it's just finding ways to occupy yourself in different hobbies and find ways to truly finding things that you truly enjoy outside of maybe the sports. And then once you start having kids, you get to teach them the knowledge that you built up around some of those things. And so that's kind of the way to maybe get back involved down the road.
Yeah. I mean, without a doubt. Just out of curiosity, what are you shooting in golf?
I'm about a 14 handicap. Nothing special, but the goal is this summer I'd like to get down to around a 10.
Okay. Well, hey, you'll have to get back to us, and we can keep everybody who's listening up to date on how your golf game's going.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted if it goes the right direction. If you don't hear from me, you'll know it didn't get any better.
Good to know. So, yeah, I mean, leaving sports, I think in any capacity, like you were saying, whether it's varsity level or even if you stopped playing sports in like junior high or something like that, you got hurt. It's hard to really lose that competitive edge. Some people do it through, video games. Seems like you found your area in golf, which is great to hear. So kind of building upon that, what kind of lessons have you learned from your time in athletics that you've been able to apply to just the rest of your life?
Oh gosh, I think sports are essentially the lessons that have been taught, are really just the building blocks of my foundation as a person. There's so many highs, so many lows that you go through in any sport that you play throughout your athletic career. You're going to win, you're going to lose. It teaches you how to be a part of the team, how to work with others, and put the team before yourself, right? I think there are so many things and lessons that whether you're paying attention or not throughout your career that are carried over into the professional world. Like I said, just that teamwork, relationship building, understanding others and how others see the world and how their viewpoint drives their decisions and their mentality. It helps you empathize with others and kind of build that understanding for the betterment of the team, right? I think, because I think everybody's had a situation maybe where you don't get along at first with a teammate or a coworker or somebody, and ultimately you're put into a situation to where you guys have to work together or figure out a common problem. And you start to build this level of understanding, and you put yourself in the other person's shoes. And it really just kind of opens people's eyes and helps build those relationships. When you're a part of a team, everybody's got a job to do, right? It may be small, it may be big, in football, right? The offensive linemen have a massive job, but are very rarely talked about unless they mess up or they miss a block and give up a sack, right?
Yep.
And, but they're not the ones you see taking, getting all this glory and everything, but they still have a job to do. And the quarterback has a job, and the wide receiver may not catch the ball, but he still has a job. And if one person messes up, right, the play may not work. And that person has to be able to, one, know what they are doing and what their job is, be able to accomplish their job, but also they need to be able to take accountability and ownership and say, hey, I messed up on this play, guys. That's my fault. I'll correct it and I'll get better. Right. And I think that carries over to the professional world and
accountability, without a doubt.
Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest things, for me, that I look for in coworkers. Right. And, we're not all perfect and mistakes are going to get made at times, but I think it's just so important to own up to those mistakes, be able to learn and take the coaching from those mistakes and not take it personally, but remove your feelings from the situation, learn from what happened, and do your best to make sure that mistake never happens again, right? And I think that's what being an athlete teaches you is let's listen to what is being said, not how it's being said to me. And, take the coaching, learn from it. And so there's just so many life skills, right? Being adaptable, learning how to be coachable, not thinking, oh, everything and it's only your way or the highway.
Right.
You have to be open, especially in the professional world. I think, there's you learn so much in college and there's so much important knowledge in books, but once you get into the true professional world and you're working in a corporate setting and, for you may be different with the sports media type stuff, but in my world, I learn something new every day.
Yeah.
And, there were so many things that I learned through books that I don't use in my job, but you learn on the fly. And so, like I said, you have to be coachable, adaptable, and just open to new ideas and opinions. And I think sports puts you in so many different situations that you just kind of learn to be open to those types of things and take that coaching. And
definitely.
So yeah, I think those are just some of the skills that really come to mind throughout my time as an athlete that, I can kind of look at and say, yeah, these are the ones that I use every day and what drives me in the way that I work and how I work with others,
Yeah. Yeah. Sports is such a fundamental part of a lot of athletes, and it kind of like what we've been talking about, it's kind of hard to take that away and finding different ways to kind of express that when you're not on the field, whether it's in the workplace or going out to the golf range or in the kitchen, it's all a great experience and really, really exciting to see that, there's hope after playing days are over. Cause I know for a lot of people there's millions of athletes in the world and only a select few of them ever make it pro and only a select few of them ever make it big. You
Right.
can make it to the pros,
Yep.
but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're Mike Trout or you're Tom Brady, and
Yep.
it's
The average professional football career is under 3 years. So yeah,
Right.
it's tough to be the Tom Brady's and the Peyton Mannings and the Aaron Rodgers of the world.
Yeah. Well, quarterbacks, they kind of get away with it. They can play longer. They're not taking as many hits as everybody else,
But either way, you still got to be at a top level and you got to be really good at your job.
Yeah. No,
Because they're always trying to replace you.
Without a doubt. Could you kind of expand on that a little bit? You talked about just then how it's, someone's always trying to come for you. And that's true even in the workplace. So that's probably definitely something you learned from your time in sports.
Absolutely. And I think that really, that type of mentality, it's not a scared mentality, right? Because I think my competitive drive does not allow me to be scared of that situation. Like I mentioned, there are people who are a lot better athletes than me and are better at things than I am. But when I would step on an athletic surface, whether that's a basketball court, these days a slow pitch softball diamond, on a golf course, I very much have the mentality of I am better than everybody I am playing against until they prove to me that they are better than me in my eyes. And I think most athletes carry that mentality. But at the same time, when you get to those varsity levels or you get to those college levels, there's new players and there's new players coming through every year. And it's coaches' jobs to find people who are, in their eyes, as good, if not better than you at your job. So you develop this mentality of kind of looking over your shoulder, but at the same time, you're kind of, at least for me, back in those days, I was cocky enough to look at our special teams coach and tell him, go ahead and scour the country. You can bring in anybody you want. You're not going to find anybody that's better than me.
Yeah.
And yeah, so while you're looking over your shoulder thinking, okay, I know they're out, you have to develop that mentality of it's not looking over over your shoulder. I know they're out there looking for somebody who they think is better. It's my job to prove nobody is better. And whether that's in my professional or athletic career, I think that's just kind of a natural mentality that's been built in through sports, and definitely something that I carry with me still today.
Yeah, without a doubt. Some of the lessons you can learn from coaches, especially. Like you mentioned earlier, you said something to the effect of not how they're saying it, but what they're saying. I think, especially in today's world, could definitely be heated. That's good advice, because sometimes it's like you're missing the message here. It's not how I'm saying it; it's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Nobody likes to be yelled at. Nobody wants to be screamed at, right? But we've all had old school coaches and had those folks who their mentality is scream and shout and yell.
Yep.
And like I said, it's tough, but you can't take certain things personally, and you have to be open to coaching. And when you understand a coach's personality and perspective and what he is trying to do, you're able to remove your ego and your feelings from that discussion, or from that tongue lashing, and say, okay, yeah, I messed up, or I didn't have a good punt, or, whatever it may have been in the situation. I know Coach's way of getting that through is through yelling. So I know I'm going to get yelled at. Let me listen to what he's trying to say and be able to kind of go from there. I think a lot of people just take things too personally these days. And, like I said, I totally understand it. I've been there. I've had that time when you walk off the field and you're going to get yelled at and screamed at, and you just let it go in one ear and out the other.
Yep.
And you can't be that way, because you're not taking that coaching, and you may be missing a valuable lesson. So, and I think it's tough, from a parent's perspective too. Like I mentioned, my dad was a coach. He's told a lot of stories, and my dad was a yeller, and he's the one who really taught me that and emphasized that. Listen to what's being said, not how it's being said. And, I think that same lesson needs to go to parents, who are, developing these young athletes and watching their children grow up and play sports. Listen to what is being said to your child, not how it's being said to your child.
Right.
Because if you're playing in a soccer game and parents are on one side screaming, and and they're trying to do their coaching. The coach is on the complete opposite side of the field, and the ball is over by the parents. Who are the kids listening to? They're not listening to the coach.
Right. Exactly.
So the coach has to get animated and scream and look like he's yelling and shouting and like he's mad, but he's really just coaching and directing the kids on where they're supposed to be and where they're supposed to go. Same thing applies to basketball, right? You're in a noisy gym. The ball's bouncing. Cheerleaders are screaming and yelling.
Yeah.
Parents are cheering, clapping. Kids get heated and they get competitive. And, when you're young and you don't understand certain things and you don't have that sports IQ yet, the coach has to provide that.
Yeah.
And again, when you're in these noisy environments, it may look like your child is being screamed at and yelled at and that sort of thing, when really they're just being coached and they're being called and directed a play or, told where to go or whatever it may be, right? And so, like I said, I think that's a valuable lesson for any young athlete and any parent that may be going through these types of things is listen to what the coach is saying, not how the coach is necessarily saying it.
Yeah. So kind of going off that, as we get towards the end of the episode here, what kind of advice do you have to maybe some athletes out there who are realizing their playing days are coming to an end?
Yeah. Like I said, I think it's really important to find new hobbies, find things that you enjoy, find a way, if you want to stay involved in the game, go back to your high school, find a coaching job. There's numerous ways to stay involved after your playing days are over, if that's what you so choose. Otherwise, like I said, do some introspective thoughts and find yourself as a person and say, what do I truly enjoy doing outside of sports? And then just be open to anything. I think one thing that I held back on early on was kind of being open to the idea of new things, right? If it wasn't sports centric, I was kind of like, Yeah. I don't know if that's something, because I think any athlete, maybe in hiking, maybe a bad example, but like, whether it's going and playing pickleball or trying to play tennis or, going snowboarding or skiing or try those new things, be open to those new experiences, even though you may not necessarily be good at it right away. Right. I think it's funny. You see all these former athletes, get really into golf when their playing days are over because they play at one time, they weren't good at it, but then they have this competitive drive and this drive within themselves to say, oh, I want to get good at this because I wasn't good at it before. Right. And so you never know what may catch your interest, right?
Yeah.
So be open to all those things and don't say no. And try different things. Yeah. I think that's one of the biggest things is, there's so much more in this world than just sports. And yes, that's what a majority of maybe your identity has been built on up to this point. But, you have other interests, you have other hobbies. You just have to go uncover them and try different things until you find them.
Yeah, without a doubt. So, Jay, thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it. Be sure to tune in next week. We'll have another former athlete come on the show, and they're going to talk to us about a lot of the same things Jay talked to us about today. For the New Path Podcast, my name is Peyton, saying so long till next time.